Hello, and welcome to a conversation about Quickening, the debut feature from Haya Waseem. As part of Bell Let's Talk Day, TIFF and Bell have partnered together to make this film available to rent for free on digital TIFF Bell Lightbox. As you join us today, we encourage you to reflect on the land that you are on and its history. I am located on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. The territory is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We are grateful to work on this land. My name is Elysse Leonard, and I am a member of the year-round programming team here at TIFF. I would like to extend a sincere thank you to our lead sponsor, Bell, and our major sponsors, RBC and Visa, as well as to our major supporters, the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, and the City of Toronto, for their continued support. I would also like to thank our members, donors, and supporters for all you do to help keep TIFF moving forward. Film has the power to give voice to feelings or experiences that might otherwise be difficult to communicate. It can also help promote well-being by bringing people together. This Bell Let's Talk Day, we are thrilled to present writer-director Haya Waseem's first feature, Quickening, an insightful exploration of a young Pakistani-Canadian woman's attempt to balance familial obligations, cultural traditions, personal independence, and how this impacts her own mental health. Today, I am joined by Haya and by Soch mental health co-founder Maneet Chahal for a conversation about quickening and mental health in the context of culture, identity, and belonging. Haya Waseem was born in Pakistan and raised in Switzerland before emigrating to Canada. Her previous work includes the short films Some Other Place, Pull, and Shahzad, which was a shortcut selection at the 2016 Toronto International Film Festival. Maneet Chahal is a mental health nurse and the co-founder of Soch Mental Health, an organization committed to creating an open space for dialogue about mental health and empowering South Asian community members to recognize and accept mental health as an essential part of their wellness through education, prevention, and building resilience. Thank you so much for joining us, Haya and Maneet. Before diving into Quickening, I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit about yourselves, your work, and the perspectives you bring to this conversation. Let's start with you, Haya. Quickening is your debut feature. It had its world premiere at TIFF 2021. What inspires you to make films, and what kinds of stories are you passionate about bringing to the screen?
Yeah, I'm very grateful that I found art and had access to telling stories and just exploring anything that made me curious. This kind of stories that I like to make. I mean, I think because I was fortunate enough that my family supported me and encouraged me exploring things that I was curious about. The stories that I resonate with have to do with things that maybe as I was growing up and I was moving around that I absorbed but didn't have a chance to necessarily unpack and understand. So at the moment, I'm interested in stories that have a certain emotion at the core of them that maybe isn't very obvious to me. And so that can be quite broad. But as I'm getting older, I'm finding that it gets more and more specific to where I come from and who I am and maybe who I interact with. It kind of is open-ended, whatever sparks my curiosity.
That's great. It sounds like film is both an outlet for expression as well as self-understanding and processing for you too. And Maneet, you co-founded Soch Mental Health, which is a Brampton-based organization aimed at promoting dialogue about mental health in South Asian communities. What sparked your passion for mental health?
So I think, I think similar to what Haida shared, that personal narrative really draws people that I've seen that are bringing change in the mental health space. So seeing mental health within my home, seeing the stigma of mental health. I've openly talked about my dad struggling with his depression. The other co-founder, Jasmeet, her dad still struggling with his addiction. And I think, these experiences that you have in your families really isolate yourselves. It isolates the individual within communities. And then I think professionally, like pursuing the field of nursing, no one was really going towards towards that mental health aspect. There's a lot of buzz towards working in Emerge and working on like cardiac or medical units. And a lot of people shy away from mental health because of the unknown. I've always been that one student that always was curious about culture and how culture plays a role in our experience of mental health and physical health and it all being related. So that was a huge driving force with starting Soch, along with my clinical experience. So I did work in the hospital setting and then transitioned to working in the region of Peel, which has the largest ethnic minority of South Asians, and South Asians are the largest ethnic community in Canada. So I think that clinical experience, along with my personal, really triggered a need for health promotion, early intervention, prevention for mental health, which started Soch. So Soch in Hindi, Urdu and Punjabi means to think or a thought. And as one of the founders and the other co-founder for Soch, we really believe that we can change the way, if we can change the way our community thinks about mental health, we can change their narrative. And that's really been the driving force of all the health promotion, community awareness that we've been doing, and have really gotten recognition for doing, taking a unique approach to mental health awareness that's not always clinical. It's being creative. And I think it really aligns with today's conversation about using creative arts to bring that conversation forward in communities.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that the themes that you've mentioned, family, community, isolation, as well as creativity, and I think that's a really nice segue into talking about Quickening. So, Haya, what's Quickening about, and what drew you to this particular story?
Well, Quickening is, I would say it's a character study. It's about a young woman, Pakistani Canadian, at that cusp of, adolescence into adulthood, 19, 20. And it's an exploration of identity really at the core of it, about being Pakistani and being Canadian, about having those two worlds. And at that age, when you're so desperate to define who you are, I think things become very acutely segmented. And at least my experience at that age was I wanted so badly have all of those things exist in harmony and in balance. And I learned a lot through that phase of pushing to bring these things together in my imagined sense of what that would look like. I think a lot of young people go through that regardless of culture or background. And I think now that I'm a little bit further from that time, I feel like it's such a special, can be very difficult and very strenuous, but it can also lead to some very beautiful discoveries and opening yourself up in a vulnerable way that can give you confidence and strength. So Quickening is really just an exploration of that phase of a person's life and the conversations that emerge, and the way that I chose to explore it in this film was through a character who's experiencing a pregnancy delusion. So what happens when something at that age that can be quite grave, what happens, when that point has arrived and you have to move forward. So that's at the center of the film.
That's beautiful. And I think you've mentioned this desire for harmony that you experienced at an earlier period in your life. I wonder if you found or what you discovered in the making of this film in terms of bringing these pieces together or exploring this story.
Yeah, in the process of making the film, I mean, it was a very hybrid kind of hyper real scenario, because who I was working with partially was my Pakistani community. So distant aunts and uncles and family friends and, people that I grew up with at that time are in the movie. Aruj, who is the main character, her parents are her parents in the film. I met her when she was 8 years old and didn't speak to her for many years, and then she was at that age that I was when of the story that I was exploring. So it was it was simultaneously revisiting that time while making the film, and also our lead actress Aruj was also at that age, so it was nice for me to connect with her, and while we were making this film and creating this very creative, very enthusiastic space to really express ourselves, we were also revisiting those feelings. So I, I had some, like I said, I had some distance from when I was that age, and I'd written the film, but it was I can't describe how special it was to create something together, making the film too.
And Aruj is so wonderful in the film. You really, really feel her sense of isolation and the anxiety. And you mentioned this idea or this desire to create a hyper real environment. I wonder if you could just share a bit more about your approach to translating Sheila's emotional journey and internal experiences through things like cinematography and movement and sound.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of collaboration. I really lean on my partners. So starting with Chris Liu, who's the cinematographer of the film, we share a personal connection too. He's my partner, and we've kind of established our visual language for many years now. So stepping into the feature, we really were pushing sort of the tools that we had developed visually. And early on, I mean, he's seen me grow up through that phase too. So the isolation, but also the beauty and the strength that is in moments where you decide that you're going to observe or you're going to speak up. How do we translate that in images? Which distance do we create? How much patience does it require? Like, those were all conversations that fed into our visual language. And then I collaborated with Sarah Swire, who's this very special choreographer, actor, creative musician. And I really leaned on her for the physicality of the character. So all the dance scenes, all the theater scenes, Aruj also really took a lot from it. I took a lot from it. Like, how do you open up your body in a way that can express those feelings? And then Yona, our producer, we just created these pillars that I could lean on and trust. And if they looked back towards me for any permission to express themselves or to open themselves up more, that was like that was when I felt like our collaboration and our effort was really going somewhere. So yeah.
Wonderful. And Maneet, what was the experience of watching Quickening like for you?
I think I was really taken aback with the elements of South Asian culture that were captured within the film. When you're trying to fit into two cultures and you're trying to navigate, those milestones, what your peers are going through, things with navigating a relationship, self-identity, fitting in with your social contacts, and as well as respecting the values of your parents, the values of your culture. It's a lot of pressure that you have on South Asian youth. So I think that was depicted very well, as well as showing, with South Asian culture, and also the power of family, right? There's a lot of pressure from family, but when individuals are struggling, there are times your family will come around and be there to support you and guide you. And there's endless love and support. So it's not only showing the complications of the culture that can impact your mental health narrative, but also drawing on the strengths of the culture. So I think looking at both of them really spoke loud and clear in the film. And I think just looking at how powerful short films and storytelling can be to bring mental health awareness, that's kind of been one of the strategies we've been using within our organization, is using storytelling, whether it's people's lived experiences or stories that have been created by amazing writers and directors, that are out there, such as a film like this. It allows to start a conversation, and with that conversation, you can then validate people's experiences and also open the dialogue on breaking the stigma and connecting people that are in need of supports and services on how to do that, as well as looking at early intervention and prevention, right? I think that's where a lot of our mainstream services and mental health dialogue falls short, is that a lot of effort is put into when individuals are at that breaking point. They are, need of the system, and they're falling through the system. And where can we use arts and language, which is very powerful within the South Asian community, to bring awareness and address a topic that has so much stigma and taboo.
Wonderful, thank you. And what is the importance of sharing stories of lived experience, or why is it important to share stories like Sheila's in creating a space for open dialogue about mental health issues?
I think like one of the things is that a lot of people feel that they're alone. And that's a very common theme I've seen in my clinical practice. And I'm mainly, working with individuals, or prior to starting Soch, I work with individuals that were in the system. And when you think about mental health, majority of individuals in need of mental health supports are probably never going to come close to mental health services. They're going to fall through the cracks, and they're going to be, managing themselves, whether successfully or unsuccessfully, through their life. And I think when you look at storytelling, the biggest thing and the response we see from the community is, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. And, you see your culture, your values, your challenges validated in someone else's storyline, their narrative. But at the same time, you use that as a blueprint to have a conversation, to pull apart themes and understand what are the complications, what are things you should do, what should you not do, and really see on how can you navigate, right? With mental health challenges, not everything is about getting professional help. There's a lot of things with mental health, emotional health, with us having, foundational coping strategies, with recognizing all of us, anyone watching today, we all have mental health. It's part of our body, mind, and soul. It's all interconnected. We need to take care of ourselves. And that's kind of where it starts. So stories allow for individuals to be educated and have awareness. And it's a very safe and like supportive way to do it. It's a very community approach. And I think it really breaks those power dynamics, right? Whereas you have like clinicians approaching a community, there's a lot of power dynamics where people may not understand. So it really allows for an open cultural and linguistic language to appreciate mental health and learn about it, right? Because there is not, in a lot of ethnic communities, depending on the culture and language, if there are not activities and awareness in a way that people understand, it goes over your head. You're probably going to go on with your life. And that's why within a lot of, South Asian homes, people may not regard mental health to exist because there's never been conversation or dialogue. And that's where stories can be very, very powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you mentioned how important collaboration is to your work, to this film, and there's a real family spirit and community vibe in the making of this film. And so I'm wondering if you could talk about how you tackled such a delicate subject, such a topic that is stigmatized and rarely discussed, let alone portrayed in film. And in doing that, how did you cultivate an environment of comfort and trust for your collaborators?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think the first thing, I have to give credit to my parents and to my, my family, because they encouraged me. There was room for me to explore my feelings, my thoughts, my ideas creatively. I was never discouraged from it. So those values, that encouragement is, I think, instilled in me. And at the same time, I saw that not everyone around me that came from shared the same culture as I did had that opportunity. So I was also aware that, that's not something that's very common. It was frequent that, I'd hang out with friends and they'd be like, oh, you're so lucky that you can do this. So I always thought that that this was something to be grateful for and not to take for granted. And then the delicateness of the subject goes hand in hand with that. I know it's not, something that's easy for people, or that for my community is straightforward for whatever reason. And so I approached it, like I said, with patience and with an openness, at least from my end, to express that I don't know everything about what I'm exploring. In fact, there's so much unknown that I struggle with. And whoever is also even remotely interested in exploring these ideas together, that at least I have a commitment to going forward with this. And so it happened that Aruj and her family, Asher, and who's also an actor, comes from a creative background, and his wife Bushra, they agreed to join this creative process. So it really happens step by step and gently, and with whoever is interested. And then that carried to the Pakistani community, like the uncles and aunts and the friends, like they also came in because they don't discourage the arts. Maybe sometimes you just don't have the opportunity to be invited into these spaces. So that's what I found, was that there was there were people who wanted to participate, wanted an opportunity to gently talk about this and explore it. And so was the driving force, was to create a gentle, delicate space. But then once we were committed to it, to really have the confidence and encourage each other to open ourselves up to this process, to make this film and this experience worth the effort that we had. So yeah, that's how I approach at least the delicateness of what we were exploring and how many people got involved. Because ultimately, when the film is made and people were watching it, you've kind of gone ahead and created something that is now out of your control. Like this film, what it talks about, what it explores, are very personal themes to me and to people involved in the film. And I think there's a moment, there's always this moment where you're like, did I say too much, or did I put too much of myself out there? But then, but there's always the overwhelming response of people, like, saying, I'd never seen the story on screen and I feel this way. Just makes it so worth it.
That's really powerful. And Maneet, I wonder if you hear any resonance in what Haya is sharing about this sort of gentle, welcoming approach to engaging with these topics through film and in your own work, and how you sort of create a gentle, accessible space to enter into these conversations.
I've been admiring Haya talking about how the film came together and the community behind it. Honestly, it really replicates how we've been approaching mental health and tackling mental health from a strengths-based approach, is that there is so much community, there is so much willingness within South Asian homes to be part of initiatives. And as she mentioned, they've been kind of waiting for that invite to be asked, like, will you be a part of this? And so I love, how she's saying that, the main actors and actresses in the film are part of a family and are part of a unit. It's kind of been replicating some of the initiatives we've been doing here in our community with Soch, is that we have families coming together to workshops. We have families that have been part of short film projects. And it's so nice that, as myself, being born and raised in Brampton and now bringing back an initiative to the community and having my family involved in the delivery of mental health awareness, it really warms your heart and shows the potential of a community to come together and address issues and address gaps that maybe mainstream services have not been able to, because they don't have that insider view. And it kind of makes me reflect on that moment. I think me and Jasmine have both had those moments where we've been at home and we've heard our moms having a conversation on the phone with a family member or a friend about mental health and encouraging them to seek support and breaking the stigma. And that's because our parents have been there behind us, rooting for us. And we do approach this with being humble and being grateful, because not every single person in our community has that same opportunity. Their family dynamics, their social dynamics can be very difficult and very different. So I think that openness with the community is bringing everyone together and giving them an option to, we want to bring change. Yes, I have educational background, I have the clinical background, but my community has the personal lived experience. They have the language, they have the culture. And so it's us looking at our community. And I think that's when we kind of look at Soch, where like it is an initiative by the community for the community. Although we are the founders, a lot of our conversations are run by community members that have had experience and are willing to share their stories. And we're kind of there to make sure that happens in a safe and supportive way. And we're still learning. I think it's trial and error, but it really goes into, you know, in order to bring change, we need to do something different, because the same ways are not working. Kind of goes to show, like, you know, why are South Asians less likely to access mental health services as opposed to Caucasians, right? Like there's research coming out of CAMH about that. But it kind of goes to, well, who's taking that approach to have this conversation in a cultural, linguistic way to the community, right? So our community has a lot of strengths that you can rely on to bring that change.
Thank you. And let's talk about family a little bit more. I was struck by the fact that you both mentioned that Sheila's family in the film is both a source of pressure, but also a source of tenderness and comfort. And I wonder, Haya, if you could describe Sheila's role as the eldest daughter within the family.
So I'm the eldest of three in my family. So I relate to that experience, and I'm also the first like daughter born among cousins. Like so I really you know I think the eldest of a family, and Aruj also happens to be the older sister in her family, and I think she made me aware of that position for the first time when we were filming. And it's just how you know how you're a friend to your parents, and you're also kind of a caregiver to your siblings, and sometimes you're involved a little bit more than you should be, and you take on, you know, you could take on more responsibility than you know than maybe you need to, and then also moving from one country to another. I moved when I was 10 and then 16, like significant moves. And to see your parents also adjusting to a new environment. In my experience, I really, remember thinking about my parents having to adjust to a new environment, and feeling that they have children that they have to, take care of, and how can I help, and how can I, so I think everyone has a particular experience, and everyone has their own ways of responding to it. But for me, I think I just took on more. I feel like I need to control things and help, and now that's getting better. I'm fine discovering the balance in things, but I feel like being the eldest in a family brings these responsibilities that you want to take on. Yeah.
Thank you. And Maneet, you also talked about family as such a crucial piece of support in the support circle in terms of both facilitating access to mental health services, but also just acknowledging signs of that someone might be experiencing a mental health challenge. So I just wondered, to close out the conversation, if you could share some signs or share some strategies for folks to maybe understand if someone close to them is experiencing a mental health challenge and what they can do to support.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and really informative to like take this storytelling to practical tips. And I think the thing with mental health, what really sticks is that we are all unique in our making. We all have different patterns. And I think the most important way to recognize that someone may be struggling is to notice a shift in a pattern. So, we talk about some of our daily routines and the way we engage, right? Some people are more outgoing and they're more social. Other people are more more introverted. So if they're quiet, and they're usually quiet, that's not a big change. But we need to really pay attention to people's patterns with them taking care of themselves, their their meals, they're taking, like, getting ready, whether they're showering, whether they're attentive, whether they're engaged. Are they engaging in those activities that are purposeful to them, right? And for all of us, it's very different. And I think what makes it very challenging to notice change is that we're in a time and age of technology is really rampant. It has taken over our dinner tables, our families, our engagement. And so we're not truly attentive to people's patterns around us because we're half distracted. So, being intentional with having check-ins with your family and your friends, having times of engagement where you are not plugged into your phone, you're having intentional conversations. The best example I like to bring up, and this is relevant to like pre-COVID times, is like you're at work and someone asks you, "Hey, how are you?" And by the time they answer, they're halfway down the hallway. And we have a tendency to be like, "I'm good, I'm great, how are you?" Right? Like, it's very surface level. And in order to get other people to trust in you and to share, you also need to share yourself. So there's actually been times I've probably caught people off guard where they're like, "How are you?" I'm like, "I'm not having a great day, but thank you for asking. And I hope it turns around." Right. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, like, she actually said she's not having a good day. Like, we expected her to say everything's great and we can just move on to the next thing." So I think being intentional, taking time to connect. And like, one thing I remember, like, something my dad would always say is like, give people your time. We're always in such a rush. We're rushing from one place to the next. And, take a few minutes and to connect with people. And if you're concerned about them, something's off, give them space and time to share. And if they don't share, you can share for yourself and maybe leave the conversation as is. I think approaching a conversation very delicately, if someone is struggling, like even in the film, right? You have Sheila's friend, she feels like her friend's ignoring her, but it's her perspective of, I feel like you're ignoring me. You haven't been there for me. But having these conversations, like, what are our expectations? What are we feeling? And to share that. And for anyone, if you are struggling or you know someone that's struggling, reach out first, help, right? There's services at whether it's through your work, through your school, in your community. We have resources posted on our website, sochmentalhealth.com. You can even reach out to us. You can email us at info@sochmentalhealth.com, and we can give you services. But I think the main thing, I think, and the quickest way to explain, is a change in someone's pattern really allows you to see that something's off. And if you have that gut feeling that something's off, ask again, and don't give up, because people need to trust you to share.
Well, thank you both for sharing your time with us today, and also sharing such personal and intimate pieces of your own experiences and lives. I think that it's very encouraging to see film bringing us together for this sort of a conversation. And again, I thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it was great.
Haya's film Quickening is available to rent for free on digital TIFF Bell Lightbox now until tomorrow, January 27th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We hope that you continue the conversation online, share your thoughts about the film on social media, and be sure to tag and follow us at TIFF_net. And don't forget to use the hashtag BellLet'sTalk. For every use of hashtag BellLet'sTalk on January 26th, Bell will be donating 5 cents to support Canadian mental health initiatives. To find out more ways to support, visit bell.ca/letstalk.